Teşekkür ediyorum ve lütfen kürse geliniz. Şimdi ise Macaristan'ın Başbakanı olarak Viktor Orban'ın konuşmasını yapması için davet ediyorum. Saygıdeğer Başkan Bey ve Türkiye'den gelen bütün dostlarımız, eğer izin verirseniz Sayın Başkanım, o zaman basın
Esteemed colleagues and guests coming from Turkey, if you allow me, now for the members of the press, I'd like to summarize our discussions. There was an agreement signed in Ankara, and in line with that agreement, the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council will be formed, in which we will discuss cooperation between Hungary and Turkey. And as per the agreement, every year a bilateral meeting will be held, and the next meeting to be held was carried out today. Hungary's geographical position was marked by three major capitals, Istanbul, Moscow, and Berlin. It was signed by three major capitals. We had the President of Russia recently visiting us, as well as the Prime Minister from Germany, and a few days later the President of Turkey is now being welcomed in our country. We'd like to maintain our foreign policy, these frequent relations with other states as well as our neighbors. The foreign policy in Hungary is of the opinion that we cannot prevent the migration flowing into Europe without the contribution of Turkey, which means Turkey is a strategic partner for Hungary, not only in migration-related issues, but in strategy as well. In today's meeting, we discussed our cooperation in politics, in policies, and migration, and until mid-October, 350,000 immigrants were prevented from entering. If Turkey had not cooperated, they would have entered Hungarian borders. Both countries are members to the NATO, for which reason we are also military allies to each other. The second largest army within NATO is the Turkish army, which is an indication that Turkey is in a unique league, is a different league. We are talking about a military alliance. For this reason, our friendly relations, our military, our cooperation, political, strategic cooperation will continue. Our cooperation, our relations in military matters is improving. Based on the former agreements made between Hungary and Turkey, the joint programs, there are joint programs or projects to be carried out in Africa. So, even though we did not discuss it in Hungary, we can state now that for joint financing, we have sent a mission of doctors to Africa, and now we are starting a new project of cooperation within which we will tackle some water and health aid matters in Ghana. Our economic and trade cooperation will also improve. In 2013 or 14, Mr. Erdoğan stated that our trade relations should not be allowed to be at a low level, and at the time we agreed to reach our bilateral trade volume to 5 billion euros. But we want to be even more ambitious than that and have raised the bar to 6 billion euros. Of course, our ambitions are high and we are equally optimistic, and we are progressing towards our targets. Between the two countries, close to 3 billion euros is the trade volume, which means we need to raise it further in order to reach the 6 billion target. After the press meeting, there will be a high-level business forum in which 15 Hungarian and Turkish companies will meet each other, and they'll also meet with us. I'm also, when it comes to Exim Bank, a $200 billion credit line has been extended, has been made available for Turkish-Hungarian joint projects. And finally, something maybe not very well known by the public in Hungary. Turkey is not only a strategic or political partner or a military partner, but also in energy. Turkey is an important partner to us. If we want to be independent in energy, we then need Turkey's support. And from Turkey, we need the gas flowing in. Turkey has done its part, and we are trying to do our part, and for that reason, in near future there will be a gas line created from Turkey to Central Europe. Gas may flow in. I don't want to give too many concrete details for now because these are tough tasks, but by the end of 2021, the latest, gas may arrive at Hungary by this route. And last but not least, in the past few days, Hungary took place the largest foreign investment of its history from the Azerbaijani gas field. The MOL company acquired a large piece. In order for transactions to be complete, we also need the approval of Turkish authorities, and hopefully we'll obtain them soon. There are 150 students studying in Hungary on scholarships. Students to be sent from Turkey are selected carefully, and Turkey can choose the students to send. And in future years, hopefully these activities will continue, and the friendship between the two countries will improve further. Thank you very much, Turkish President, for your visit, and now I give the floor to you. Esteemed Prime Minister, my dear friends, esteemed ministers, members of the press, as I begin my remarks, I'd like to greet you with my most heartfelt feelings on behalf of my delegation. We held the 4th High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council. We are in Budapest on the occasion of the 4th meeting of the high-level strategic cooperation Council, and I wish that the meetings and discussions that we held today will be auspicious, both at the narrow frame and at the discussions between our two delegations. We have ended the discussions with an agreement of 10 provisions, and I hope that these discussions, these talks between the two countries will be auspicious for both parties. After our arrival to Budapest, we had a very fruitful discussion with President Adar, which was followed by the discussions that I have just mentioned with the Prime Minister. Our ministers of the both sides also held discussions between each other, and I held discussions, I had talks with the Prime Minister and ministers of foreign affairs, which I believe will yield very fruitful results for the future. In order for our strategic cooperation to be advanced, we discuss which steps need to be taken in, for instance, politics, in military, in security cooperation. Migration is already one of the most important steps. Our economic, trade, and cultural relations. We discussed what we could do together. Of course, education, culture, land transport, social services were some of the areas in which we signed 10 separate documents which strengthened the legal basis of our cooperation. Our bilateral trade volume was 2.6 billion in 2018, and we want to raise this level to $6 billion, and we have reached an agreement of mutual will with the Prime Minister, which is significant. Hungary and Turkey are, in my opinion, capable of reaching this level. The activities and investments of our entrepreneurs in Hungary are very successful. We are about to meet with 15 businessmen from Hungary. They will be meeting with 15 business people from Turkey in a roundtable format. And with that meeting, hopefully the cooperation between our business people will improve. They will discuss what joint steps they can take together or what projects they can hold in third countries. For instance, the Prime Minister just mentioned some projects that could be carried out in Africa, which is also an issue that we attach importance to. And I'm sure that Hungarian authorities will facilitate the efforts of Turkish entrepreneurs, and likewise we are dedicated to do the same for Hungarian entrepreneurs who are taking investment activities in our country. We are going to hold a meeting with business people in which we will discuss, for instance, defense industry. Certain projects which we want to carry out in near future. Our joint cultural and historical heritage will be protected. For this end, we have a very exemplary, a very model cooperation with Hungary. Last October, with the Prime Minister, we have inaugurated the Gülbaba tomb, which was renovated. There has been a marked increase in the number of visitors to the tomb after the renovation. A Turkish school belonging to the Mari Foundation is going to become operational thanks to the support of the Hungarian Prime Minister, for which I'd like to thank him once again. The school will teach the Hungarian official curriculum, and in September 2020 it will start its education activities. Members of the press, Hungary is also supporting Turkey's membership effort to the EU, which is very valuable for us. Indeed, the Prime Minister has lended us great support, for which I'm always grateful. Recently, the European Union has an approach towards Turkey which cannot be called constructive. A few members have bilateral issues which should not freeze the relations between EU and Turkey. The Union is also harming its own interests with this approach. Turkey's full accession to the Union will add value to the Union as well, which must be perceived. We also want to improve our relations with the four countries. During our talks, we also thanked the Prime Minister for his support towards our Peace Spring operation. In our country, currently 4 million refugees are hosted. 3.6 million of them are Arabs, Yazidis, Keldanis, Aramis, and 350,000 are Kurdish. A significant number of those may possibly migrate to Europe, but so far, as a requirement of the solidarity between us, we have always demonstrated patience in this process. And now we are working to establish a safe zone. With the establishment of the safe zone, the step that we would like to take is that the refugees hosted in our country can safely return to their homelands. Recently, the UN Secretary General was in Istanbul, and I held a meeting with him in which we expressed our will to organize a meeting of international donors in order to establish a safe zone. The documents, the projects that I have presented to him, he said he would study. He made a commitment to study them, and the process is now being closely followed by my Minister of Foreign Affairs. Hungary is in solidarity with us in our combat against terrorism, which shows how strong our strategic cooperation is. As the Prime Minister just expressed before my address, we are together at NATO, which means we are also strategic partners. Strategic partners cannot side with terror groups. It's not possible, but unfortunately, some strategic partners sometimes, unfortunately, meet with terror leaders or they cooperate or they do solidarity with terror leaders, which is upsetting for us, because if we are to fight against international terror together, in that case, NATO members cannot hold such talks, such meetings. Against Daesh, there is no second country in the world who is demonstrating a stronger stance against Daesh. And the results we have achieved against Daesh so far is evident. At the first phase in Al-Bab, we were able to eliminate 3,000 Daesh members. In our prisons today, there are more than 1,150 Daesh members. Recently, Baghdadi's sister was captured in Aziz together with his wife, and now she is held by us, similarly his wife. And recently 13 people from his close circle have been captured by us. This is the way we fight against Daesh, and we are committed. And we never compromise on our combat against terror, because There is no good terror or good terrorist, or there cannot be my terrorist or your terrorist. So if we are to carry out this struggle, we have to do it in a committed manner for the peace and for the interests of humanity. That is what we have done so far and what we will do in the future. The Syrian crisis has been going on for 9 years, and more than 1 million people have lost their lives, and more than 12 million have had to abandon their homes. According to UN calculations, from our own budget, we have spent $40 billion. Our country cannot shoulder this burden on its own anymore. And if you ask me what we have received from the EU, the commitment that we were given was 3 plus 3 billion euros for 2015, but we have only so far received the 3 billion euros. Every time we meet, we are told that it is in the project, it's in the pipeline, and it's about to arrive, but nothing is arriving yet. Even if it does arrive or not, when people are trying to run away from barrel bombs and trying to take shelter with us, we have to give them any kind of support that we can. That's what we have been doing and will do. The Peace Spring operation, as I had just mentioned. With the Peace Spring operation, so far we were able to maintain our struggle, our efforts. With the US, we agreed on a 120-hour time window in order to drive the terrorists out of the safe zone. We similarly held a Sochi agreement with Russia, during which we agreed on a 150-hour time frame, but neither the US was able to drive away terrorists from the region within that 120 hours, nor Russia within the 150 hours was able to push the terrorists out of these zones. Since they have not been pushed away or expelled from this zone, Daesh, YPG, PYD, PKK, the fight against them continues in a dedicated fashion. From 151 different countries of the world, 76,000 people have been banned from entry to Turkey. These are people who are affiliated with Daesh or other terror groups. Currently in our prisons, as I have just mentioned, 737 foreign and in total 1,149 Daesh members, of which 737 are foreign nationality. During our Peace Spring operation, 270 Daesh members have been taken from outdoor prisons, the majority of which were women and children, because the PYD had released them and we reinstated them back to prisons. With the apprehended Daesh members, we are still considering about their situation. And finally, last September, Hungary became an observing country for the Turkish Council, which is very pleasing for us. Hungary, being an observing member to the Turkish Council, and the Europe office of Turkish Council opened in Hungary, will strengthen our cooperation within this geography. A short time ago, in Baku, we were together with my dear friends, and there we held our talks, and we're here today. We're not far away from each other. We're only at a 2 hours distance from each other, from Ankara to here. And in the future, we will maintain this proximity, not only the physical proximity, but also our cordial proximity. With these thoughts, I hope that our visit to Hungary will be auspicious, and once again, I thank the Prime Minister and the people of Hungary for the warm hospitality that they have demonstrated towards myself and my delegation. Thank you.
Sayın Başkanım, teşekkür ediyorum. Şimdi birkaç tane soru sormak için imkanımız açıldı. Evvela MTV'nin.
Thank you very much. Now we can receive a few questions.
Beregi, Macaristan televizyonundan geldim ve Sayın Erdoğan'a soracağım.
I have a question to President Erdoğan. The support from the EU, if it's not received, do you have a plan to, for instance, allow refugees who would like to migrate? Will you be releasing them towards Europe? Or would Hungary be included if that is the case? Even if support is received or not, we will continue being a host to our guests. But of course, that can also only go so far.
Nereye gideceği malumdur.
It's obvious where they will go, and they may go without stopping in Hungary, which they already know.
Evet, aslında bizleri de bu soru sürekli ilgilendiriyor.
This is a question for us as well. Where will this gate be open to? Our wish is that people who have to abandon their homeland should be able to go back, because their home is the most important place for you on the face of the earth. So we need to lend support to these people so that they can go back to their homes. For which reason, that's what the government of Hungary has been telling to Europe all the time. We need to help them go the other direction, not this direction. The current safe zone, in order for it to be established, I have seen the plans. The towns, the mosques, churches being rebuilt is shown in the plans. Hungary is not one of the large or strong countries. We do not overestimate ourselves, neither do we underestimate. And in proportionate to our size, and based on our responsibility towards the international community, we will do this, and we would like to join your construction programs, for instance, in constructing villages, schools. The safe zone, for the rebuilding of the safe zone, you can always see Hungary behind you. I don't need to even demonstrate myself being a strong person. That was back in the time when I was young. But still, I'd like to say the following, without showing my muscles. Hungary, when it comes to protecting its borders, Hungary is capable of protecting its own borders. Both biological and physical border has been formed, and in order to protect that, Hungary is always ready. It has the weapons or the human capital required for protecting our borders. We have the capability to do so, and no one can pass through the Hungarian border. I can easily commit to that as the Hungarian government. Our security system is strong enough to protect the Hungarian people from illegal migration. You're going to hold a visit to the US, and you'll be meeting with Donald Trump, the president. of the US. What are your expectations from that visit, especially when it comes to Patriots and F-35s? Are you expecting a new step? We cannot design clothes for an unborn baby. First and foremost, during our talks, we'll discuss our bilateral relations as well as maybe handling some regional problems. Of course, in our bilateral relations so far, the S-400 or the Patriots or the F-35s, these are significant issues which will probably take place during the discussions. $100 billion trade target is set between the two countries, which we'll also discuss during the talks, which areas, which industries, and what can be done together. But first and foremost, we'll discuss our fight against terror, what will take place in the future in our joint fight against terror. For instance, Mazlum Kobani, he is no different than Baghdadi. As Baghdadi is important, Mazlum Kobani is similarly important, and he is the leader of an organization which has killed hundreds of people. There cannot be a distinction between terrorists as good and bad terrorists, or people who kill a terrorist who kills himself, who commits suicide. Similarly, during the time of Mr. Obama, Osama bin Laden was killed in a similar way, which means just by killing people who are leading terror organizations, we do not end terror, which means our joint solidarity is very important. Especially when we are strategic partners, we need to fulfill the requirements of our strategic partnerships, because if we don't, terror which is targeting us today may then target another country tomorrow. So we'll discuss these significant issues. We'll discuss steps that need to be taken in defense industry within the frame of our strategic partnerships. And since the Patriots were not given to us, we have searched for an alternative for our defense systems, and we found the S-400 systems. But we bought it and it's over. But if the US is ready to give us Patriots, if the conditions are favorable, we can still buy Patriots from the US, which we have already offered them. If they're saying it needs to be ratified in the Congress, they should, and give us the offer, give us the bid, and we can consider their bid. And we don't have any conditions against the US so far, especially in air transport. One of the most important brands of the world is Turkish Airlines. It is acquiring meeting the majority of its needs from the US. For instance, large body Boeings, that's where they're bought from. As you know, Turkish Airlines is the airline which flies to the most destinations in the world. It's top in the world in the number of destinations that it flies to. We need to be aware of all these facts and cannot ignore them, and must take our steps accordingly. Thank you.
Teşekkür ediyorum. Şimdi Origo'yu rica ediyorum. Andras Kovac, Origata'nın ben Sayın Başbakan'dan soru soracağım. Bugün öğleden sonra
Today in the afternoon, Oliver Varhey
Avrupa'da
officially
çevre ve komşuluk portfolyosunu aldı.
has been taken into the environment and neighborhood portfolio. The development of the European Union is such an issue that it may require a dedicated press conference or a few press conferences by itself. Hungary, when it comes to development and neighborhood policies, if Hungary is accepting the portfolio, that means we have achieved, we're being successful, because this is the most difficult portfolio. Hungary is the outmost border of EU. For that reason, this problem is very important for us. It's an important responsibility for us. Former members of Europe, older members of European Union are making, how much effort are they making to protect their borders? But we have entered the Union on a later date, and we have projects and plans to protect the borders. And as I have expressed to President Erdoğan, in development, we need new steps, different than the steps that came before. We will do new improvements that are different than the ones that came so far in Europe. And in Europe, there is a group under the administration of country leaders which rejected the acceptance of Macedonia and other countries as members into the EU. And within that development, for that development, we will express some other thoughts and plans. That doesn't mean we need to maintain development. We need to maintain new development and new opinions. There will be new discussions in Europe as to the borders of Europe and how far can the Schengen zone extend. In the past, for instance, Turkey was on the table as well, and what we do with Turkey's participation, with Turkey's accession. And in order to get accepted to the Union, we need to create new conditions. It's time for us to get on a new car rather than an old car, and for that Hungary has taken up a significant responsibility in neighborhood and in expansion, in development. In economy and politics, there are successful portfolios within the EU, but we have accepted a difficult portfolio, and we want to demonstrate our commitment by doing so. My first question is to Prime Minister Orban. Many countries are objecting or reacting, but you have lended your support as Hungary. After you said you may open the gates, European leaders wanted to meet with you. When will your meetings with leaders take place? And when you say you may open the gates, is there a certain time limit that you are offering to Europe? This question also requires a press meeting by itself. Hungary is a bit different than other European countries. We have a different perspective on some issues, but it's not only limited to that. We have certain national thoughts about some other nations. Turkey is not only a country of a great nation, but also a great population. We also see ourselves as a great nation which has a deep history, and nations need to respect each other and act accordingly. For that reason, we always demonstrate our respect towards Turkey. If, for instance, as the Prime Minister, we had any lack of respect, for instance, as the Prime Minister, in that case I need to apologize as the Prime Minister, or this is something unacceptable in Hungary. Our approach to Turkey is the approach of a very historic nation towards another nation which is even greater and more historic. That is the basis of our cooperation and our relations. Hungary is geologically very significant. We have Berlin on one side, Moscow on the other side, and Ankara and Istanbul to the south, which means as long as we are in this location, Mr. Erdoğan's interests are also the success of Hungary. He should send investors and encourage investments and entrepreneurial activities here. We need to also support in migration-related activities, and him likewise. To the southern border of Hungary, a few 100,000 people have been stopped, which is about interests of Hungary. Just stopping a few hundred is not enough. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants coming to the borders of Hungary is something that we need to prevent from happening, for which reason we need to lend our support to Turkey, because among Turkey's projects you see the return of refugees back to their homelands. And I believe that between Hungary and Turkey there is friendship and cooperation. And this is one of the fundamentals of this friendship. I believe this is to the interest of Hungary, and it's Hungary's conviction. Even if Europe is thinking differently, I do not change my opinions. If there's a different trend in Western Europe, or if they hold different opinions, we'll still remain with this opinion. We need to think as Hungarians and speak Hungarian. As my friend expressed, I talked about opening the gates before. We have prepared plans and projects for the safe zone. The initial target of these plans is that these people will be able to go back to their own homes and to their own land, their own homeland, and you need to do the preliminary preparation, all the plans and projects for that. And as we do that, of course, we cannot handle it as Turkey on our own, but we demonstrated a similar example in Jarablus. Buildings were destroyed, we maintained, repaired, provided the infrastructure and facilities and amenities like electricity or water, and 365,000 people were able to go back. Why? Because that was their own country, that's where they had their own homes. The same for Tel Abyad and Rasul Ayn. The region between the two is now under our control, and we want to hold a meeting of international donors, and a certain support we claim should be given to us, and we're not asking for any money for our national budget. Under the guarantorship of the UN, we can carry out the construction activities. When it comes to construction, we are either number 2 or number 3 in the world, and from 6 months to 2 years, at least this,
ve bu insanlar kendi topraklarına,
at least a
kendi
pilot
evlerine
project should
dönme
be
imkanı
enacted
yakalım.
so that people get the chance to go back to their own homes and their own homelands. We're ready
Görüştüğüm liderlere
for this.
hepsine
Every leader that I meet, I show and I present the
sorularını cevaplandırıyorum.
books that I
Ve bu
hold.
şekilde
I
de kendimizi
give
her an
information and I
hazırlıyoruz
answer their
ve
questions. We
bunun
see
için de
ourselves
altyapı
as
çalışmalarımızı
always
devam
ready
ediyoruz.
and we maintain our infrastructure efforts. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum hem başbakanımıza hem de
Thank you very
başkanımıza
much,
ve basın toplantımız
Prime
şimdi
Minister
şu anda
and
bitmiş.
President. This
Sona
concludes
erdi.
our press conference.